Hi, how are you? Good to see you again. And if you're new to our program, welcome. I'm happy you joined us. I would like to talk today about my past during the time between July 23, 1941 and February 22, 1942. However, before I start up with this, I would like to make a few corrections. I mentioned in my first program that I came to Canada in 1945. That was wrong. I came to Germany in 1945 as a DP child, and that's another story on and of itself, and we'll talk about it later. However, to Canada I came in 1948. It was October 3rd. I came with a transport ship, a military transport ship that was transporting soldiers during the war. It was called His Majesty's HMS General Stewart. We landed in Halifax on October 3rd, I believe it was October 3rd. It was before the Jewish holiday of of Rosh Hashanah. So this is what I'd like to correct, and now I'd like to go back to this narrative of the story. And again, as I'm talking about my past, I have almost a guilty conscience for talking about the past. I regard the experience of the Holocaust, the experience of those who survived, not to mention the martyrdom of those who perished, who died, who were murdered in all kinds of vicious, cruel ways, as a violation of the privacy, as a violation of the sacred moment in life, as a, how shall I call it, destruction once over of what happened. And so I have a problem talking about these events. That's number one. And number two, I wonder what good does it make? What purpose does it serve? If I talk and you listen and people listen and then you go away and forget about it, what have I achieved and what have you achieved? I hope that in spite of all this, maybe people will react and join our movement of being united against anti-Semitism. However, this does not stop me from having the emotion of a moment of desecration of the sanctity of those who were martyred, including my mother, my father, my baby brother, my relatives on both sides, my mother's side, my father's side. And so, in spite of this, I pursued the conversation with you. In spite of the fact that I know there's a slogan, never again, and it's being used by so many people. This slogan is almost abusive of the sanctity of the people who died, because everybody's mouthing never again. I hope that in spite of this, I'm not wrong in my faith that you will respond and join us in our fight against anti-Semitism. And now let me tell you what happened after my father was killed. After my father died, I remember coming home. My mother was totally out of herself. She was devastated. We didn't know what she was expecting. My grandfather came to her, I remember, with coming desolated. He asked if there's something to eat in the house. And my mother responded. I was, so to speak, hurt for my grandfather's sake. She said to him, "Your two sons were now taken away from you. How can you think of food?" My grandfather was an old man. I don't know exactly how old he was, but he was old. And I felt sorry for my grandfather. To this day, I feel sorry for him because my mother responded harshly to him. But nevertheless, during the time after my father was taken away, we somehow continued to live. We were robbed of our possessions, and yet we continued. We had to wear a yellow badge, a round yellow badge, and then it was changed into a Star of David. All Jewish people had to wear it on the back and on the front left side of the chest to be identified as Jews. Jewish people were abused, the property was confiscated, everything was taken away, and everybody lived from day to day. People then began to work for the German authorities. I remember they established a school for seamstresses where my aunt worked, and that job of hers saved our lives. And I'll come to it later on. Anyway, most of the time between that period, from the time of the murder of my father to the time of February 22, 1942, I spent on a farm. On that farm, I had to adjust myself to the life of a child on a farm, as a farmer. And I remember my cousins, who were also children, we were little children together, they were older than I, they were already going to school. I was not in school yet. Always said to me, don't be spoiled, you have to do what you have to do in the farm and forget that you're coming from home. And forget what you were doing at home. And so I tried to do my best to fit into the life of a farm. The farmer had a wife and a farmer. They had two children. One was Sergei, and he was a boy, a teenager, in the age of about 17, maybe 18. And a little daughter, a sister of his, an 11-year-old child. And she was kind of not quite so well. And I remember detached from us. Sergei was like very, very nice to me, very close to me. He took care of me. He tried to help me. But I remember he used to teach me how to ride a horse without a saddle. I also had to do some chores. And I recall one chore I had to this day I'm being haunted by it. I was given an axe and I was told to go and kill a chicken and bring in the chicken because it was going to be cooked for the meal. And I went out. I couldn't hold up the axe in my hand. It was so heavy. I pulled it up and then it dropped and hit the chicken. And the chicken flew up in the sky. And I ran the other way. I think it was funny, but it was really tragic because of the situation in which I was placed. Then on that farm, we also had a visitor. Evenings there was a young man who used to come to the farm and speak with the owner of the farm on various things. And he was also very nice to me, a nice gentleman. It turned out he was a Russian soldier. At that time, many Russian soldiers remained behind the front lines, and many of them worked on farms, and many of them were hiding in the forests. And he came and he used to visit with us almost 3-4 times a week, maybe more. And we would always entertain ourselves, and he was very nice. His name I remember. I remember it because I read it in the memoirs of my cousin, Mira. She was there with me on the farm, and she mentioned his name is Kola Varchonin, and he was a nice young man. Then there was a decree by the Germans that all Russian soldiers who remained behind the lines had to turn in, and if they did not turn in and caught, they would be immediately executed. Many of them turned in, and many of them went into hiding in the forest and became the nucleus of a developing partisan force which fought very, very effectively and very strongly, but at a very heavy price of life and suffering against the Germans later on. So this Kol HaVerchonin took so to say, to me, and it was very friendly with me. Years later, not years later, the whole thing took place of, from the times the taking away of my father to the extermination of our entire town took place within 13 months. But within this period, we went to the forest. And when we came to the forest, and I'll come to the story later on, Kol HaVerchonin found out that we were there, that is I, my sisters, 2 sisters, my uncle and his wife and son, and with us was also my aunt's sister. Kol found out that we were there, so he came over to one day, as we were in the forest, and it was cold. He came over with some of his friends, maybe 4 riders and horses, and they came into us, and we were frightened, who are they? And it turned out it was him. And he's looking for me personally, where is Chaim? And he brought for us clothing, covering, blankets. And because of that, we managed to survive the cold winters for the next few years in the forest. It was a great help to us. He was also the founder of the partisan brigade in the coming months. So this is what happened while I was, so to speak, in the village between the time of the execution, killing of my father, and later on the creation of the ghetto in our hometown. I will come to this next time. In the meantime, I want to invite you to join us to fight anti-Semitism. Please give us a thumbs up, and we'll see each other next week. God bless you, and have a good week.